You're 10 years old. You're sitting in the backseat of your mom's car, anxiously awaiting to get home from a day of shopping because your mom bought you this year's hottest animated film, Ratatouille. You get home and pop that sucker in the DVD player, getting ready to feast on your own fine dining, when all of a sudden you're met with this.
What the fuck?
Video Brinquedo, also known as Toyland Video here in the States, was an animation studio located in São Paulo. São Paulo. It was an animation studio located in São Paulo, Brazil. Formed in 1995, Video Brinquedo, previously known as Spot Films, began as a distributor of Portuguese-dubbed children's animation programming. A couple of shows they distributed included Sonic X, Braceface, Little Bear, and The Adventures of Gok Gok. But in the year 2000, Video Brinquedo would end up distributing one of the most important shows in the company's history, a 3D animated series by Bridgestone Multimedia Group called Kingdom Under the Sea.
There is a kingdom under the sea.
The show consisted of 3 30-minute episodes following a young clownfish and his relationship with his father. Sound familiar? That's because it ripped off nothing. While the characters from Kingdom Under the Sea seem like a direct take from the movie Finding Nemo, Disney and Pixar wouldn't release that movie for another 3 years. To me, Kingdom Under the Sea kind of seemed like Bridgestone wanted to make their own version of VeggieTales, with a lot of stories and themes surrounding Christianity and God, but it kind of feels like they were like, okay, we need to make a faith-based cartoon, but we can't make them veggies, because they already did that, so what else can we do for characters? Then one guy just blindly threw a dart at a dartboard covered in nouns, and it was like, hey, what about fish? However, the religious nature of these films doesn't really come as a surprise when you learn that Bridgestone Multimedia Group formed their company as a way to create faith-based family films. They even gave a special thanks to God in the credits. So basically, my understanding is that Kingdom Under the Sea had collected a bunch of dust underneath copies of The Love Guru and Epic Movie in the Walmart bargain bins. But when Finding Nemo finally came out, confused grandmas and just burnt-out parents all began buying copies of Kingdom Under the Sea, either to appease their impatient screaming kids, or maybe they just genuinely mistook the movie for Finding Nemo. With their first major financial success, it was time for Brinquedo to finally throw their hat into the ring, making their own animated feature films. And they were absolute flops. The first of which was their own version on the classic fairy tale Pinocchio, which featured a fairy straight off my Teenage DeviantArt page and a Pinocchio whose hat was made of pure jello. The second original animated film was an adaptation of another classic, Rapunzel, this time around featuring more consistent designs and even a few musical numbers.
Quero ser livre pra pensar. A minha história eu vou traçar. Desde que nasci eu sou mandada.
However, neither film saw any sort of success in the way that the studio had hoped. If they were truly looking to make the buku bucks, Brinquedo would yet again have to pivot their business model to make their way into the direct-to-video market. I mean, Kingdom Under the Sea had granted them so much success just a few years earlier, but that was only because it had a coincidentally similar theme and setting to a Disney blockbuster film. Wait a minute. This is when the Brazilian animation studio decided to pivot into the world of mockbuster filmmaking. For those who don't know, mockbusters are films that try to cash in on major Hollywood blockbuster films, usually sharing similar characters, storylines, aesthetics, setting, to try to confuse the consumer to think that it's related to the original film, or sometimes even the original film itself. Mockbusters are also the perfect way to prank your buddy Michael, who takes 2 edibles, and then when he steps out of the room to use the bathroom, you swap the DVD, and then when he comes back from pissing, he thinks he's just tripping absolute balls, and you can tell him that he's being like really, really weird, and then everyone thinks he's being really, really weird and just ruining the hang for everyone, Spencer. Michael. But the concept of the animated mockbuster is not a new thing. Going back as far as the 1930s, after Walt Disney and UB Works saw immense success with their new character Mickey Mouse, other studios tried their hand at creating their own iconic mascot. While many Mickey clones came and went, none compared in terms of the success and similarity than Foxy. Created by Rudolph Ising after landing a contract with Warner Bros., Foxy would be featured in the first Warner musical-oriented cartoon as a part of their new series of shorts entitled Merry Melodies, a name which strikes a very similar resemblance to Walt Disney's Silly Symphonies, which had come out 2 years prior. It's super easy to see the similarities between Mickey and Foxy, but the similarities don't just end at their looks. They both had identical girlfriends, and they both got into thematically similar hijinks. Production of Foxy shorts apparently ceased after Ising received a phone call from Walt Disney himself asking him to cease use of the character. But were these similarities calculated? I mean, after all, Ising had worked many years alongside Disney on his Oswald the Rabbit cartoons, so could it be that their artistic influence kind of just rubbed off on each other and that their styles became more similar through osmosis? Besides, Mickey himself has been noted to be a design made to closely resemble Felix the Cat. When Video Brinquedo threw their hat into the Mockbuster making ring, they weren't trying to keep it a secret or act like it was unintentional at all. There's actually a quote from the company's content director, Mariko Milani, who said, "We try to imagine what will be in the spotlight." The first of their Mockbuster films was a 2006 movie titled The Little Cars in the Great Race. The film was made to cash in on the popularity of the Disney Pixar film Cars, which had only hit theaters 11 days prior to Video Brinquedo's release. This strategy would prove to be incredibly successful for the company, selling approximately 1 million copies in Brazil during its first month of release, and then selling 20,000 copies per month in the United States. The success of The Little Cars led the studio to create 7 more sequels to the franchise, and even a video game. From 2006 to 2011, Video Brinquedo began producing a plethora of Mockbuster animated films, such as The Little Cars 2, Rhodopolis Adventures, Ratatouille, Gladiformers, Little Bee, Little Princess School, The Little Cars 3, Fast and Curious, The Little Panda Fighter, The Little Cars 4, New Genie Adventures, Tiny Robots, Gladiformers 2, Little and Big Monsters, What's Up, Balloon to the Rescue, The Frog Prince, and The Little Cars 5, Big Adventures. Over the years, Video Brinquedo's films were criticized for their lackluster animation, bad writing, bizarre pacing, and occasional racist joke.
I don't want that Chinese guy in there with my monsters. He didn't even say anything when I showed him the cookie.
Did you try showing him a fortune cookie?
Bruh.
On top of this, some of the films have scenes where it seems like characters are running around nonsensically or dancing, and it seems to have almost no bearing on the plot whatsoever. Some theorize that this was to pad out the length of each movie so that it would hit the bare minimum requirement of runtime to be acknowledged as a feature film by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. I went through the entire filmography of the Video Brinquedo films on IMDb, and their overall rating averaged out to 2.5 out of 10. So, not a huge hit with audiences. There's an awesome article about the studio written by Amelia Taint from The Guardian. In it, she interviews Vitor Brandt, who was one of the 2 screenwriters for Video Brinquedo's Little and Big Monsters, which was their film inspired by DreamWorks' Monsters vs. Aliens. It is revealed here just how much care they put into the production of these films. For example, they didn't care much about the quality of the script, says 38-year-old Brandt on his bosses. The only information Brandt had to work off was a Monsters... What the f***? The only information Brandt had to work off was a Monsters vs. Aliens poster, as DreamWorks hadn't yet broadcast any trailers, and rushing meant mistakes found their way into the final cut. There was this character named Fred, says Brandt, which in Brazil is short for Frederico. At the last minute, they decided to rename him Guto. They searched for Fred in the script and did a replace all with Guto, but there was a line in which Fred was called Frederico by his angry uncle. The replace changed it to Gutorico, which makes no sense at all. Over the next few years, DVD sales started to slow down, and in 2014, Brinquedo rebranded to Crianças Inteligentes, which translates to smart kids in English, where they pivoted to focus on educational content for young children. They post on their YouTube channel multiple times a week. Let's check it out. While we can look at Video Brinquedo and look at their 2.5 out of 10 rating and call them bad, does that mean it was bad that they were ever made. There's a quote from Brinquedo product director Marco Botana saying, "We always wanted to produce entertainment at an accessible cost. We also wanted to offer job opportunities to a lot of animators in Brazil, where there wasn't an animation industry. Throughout the history of the company, we've always given a lot of job opportunities, paid taxes, and got children happy." So while it is easy to point and laugh at the low budgets and plagiaristic nature of the films, they were creating jobs for Brazilians who seemingly had no entryway into the industry. That doesn't sound bad to me. When we start talking about art and entertainment, it can become a little blurred where inspiration ends and ripping off begins. Picasso once said, "Good artists borrow, great artists steal." Notch himself has been quoted saying that when he created the original version of Minecraft, it was nothing more than a ripoff of a game called Infiniminer, a game which had come out only a month prior. Infiniminer creator Zach Barth even claimed that his game was directly inspired by a game called Infinifrag. So why is it that we celebrate some ripoffs and chastise others? Some people say that the difference lies in putting a new spin on the source material, but none of Brinquedo's storylines or characters are a one-for-one copy of the movies that they're ripping off. You could actually say that their stories are completely original, but with a few surface-level details that they took from looking at the major studios' posters. Is it the quality, or the marketing, or the timing? If Ratatouille had a much higher budget and had come out a whole 5 years later under the name Marcel's Magnificent Restaurant, would it have been met with the same level of criticism? What if the Little Panda Fighter came out exactly when it did, but it was an objectively better film than Kung Fu Panda? Would people still be upset or criticized because the intent was to deceive the consumer? If there were no Foxy and Merry Melodies to cash in on Mickey and Silly Symphonies, would Warner Bros. Still be on the same track that led them to create other icons such as Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck? I don't know. Fun to think about.